Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another Sree Daily COVID-19 call. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm so honored that you are with us here today. Please bring your friends by resharing my post, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any other platform that we're on. Please share, reshare, tag your friends. We're going to have a wonderful Friday afternoon conversation about what is new around the issue of COVID-19. And we are going to learn as much as we possibly can, even under these terrible circumstances. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism, and I'm a digital and social media consultant. One of the things I do is do virtual events. And so with a title like I have at Stony Brook, I have to do events. And so that's what I'm doing, to learn and to share what we're doing. We've made this into a global community. We've had more than 200,000 people watching in just the first 15 days. And now we're already up to 22 days. We're going to have people from around the world. Tell us where you're watching from. Iman is watching from Chicago on Twitter. Jonathan's watching from the East Village. Tag your friends. We know you have folks who will enjoy being here with us and learning from our wonderful guests. Let me tell you who they are. Our guests today are Robin Chase, who is at RM Chase. Follow her on Twitter. She's co-founder of Zipcar, the amazing startup and now very well-established company that changed mobility. She's also the author of Peers Inc., How People and Platforms Are Reinventing or Inventing the Collaborative Economy and Reinventing Capitalism. We'll also be meeting Kim Bobo, who's at VA Interfaith Kim. She's executive director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and she's very much interested in issues of fair wages and other aspects of the financial story that we're all living with now. We're also joined for live tweeting by Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. Please do follow them. We're also joined, you can see Susanna from Denver and other folks from around the world. Just tag your friends right now. They can join live or join the recording afterwards. Let me just also tell you that we have our very first sponsor of our show, and we're so grateful to Tim Sohn and SohnSocialMediaSolutions.com. He's offering a course on live video. So how to make live video, survive with live video, a course from SohnSocialMediaSolutions.com. Look at the pricing, $0 to $100. How amazing is that? So if you're interested but can't afford to pay the $100, you could just go in and pay whatever you like. I love this pay as what you can, pay what you like approach to business today. It makes I think it's a really good way to think about that, especially in these times. And he's a wonderful expert on live video. I've learned a lot from him. We've worked together for many years. So please go to Sohn, S-O-H-N, socialmediasolutions.com, and please do support him and do sign up. I know he will be grateful. And if you would like to be an advertiser, we have very reasonable rates for advertising. And we also will help any nonprofits, any small business that wants to get their name out there. We will help you. So just email me, sree@sree.net. Now, enough with all of that. Let's bring in our fabulous guests. And here they are. Hi, Robin.
Hello.
And
Hi.
Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hey.
Hey, thank you so much for being here, for being part of this international conversation. We are going from one Zoom call and one meeting to another, so I presume you've done a whole bunch of them today. So your speaking to me today is very special, especially at the end of a very long day. So thank you. And let me just start by asking each of you, where are you, how are you, and how are the circumstances around you? Robin, we'll start with you.
I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I'm 4 adults in a 1-bedroom apartment because when the lockdown came, by chance, I happened to have a lot of children, adult children, who decided to come stay with my husband and I. So everything is going well. I've been locked down for a couple of weeks now, and I don't have COVID. I'm so happy. And I'm trying to keep it that way.
Yes, I'm so glad to. I'm glad to hear that. I think a lot of people who just heard you say you had 4 adult children in a 1-bedroom apartment were
4
watching.
adults, 2 children.
Sorry,
So
4 adults. Sorry, 2 adults, 2 adult children, and 2 adults. Other adults are feeling claustrophobic and maybe grateful for their situation, whatever it is. But
yes,
I guess you've got your family together, and that's special in its own way.
the 2 double bed mattresses in the living room is amusing.
Yes, and you're all keeping safe, and thank good news on that. Kim, where are you? How are you?
I'm good. So even though I run an organization in Virginia and all my staff are in Virginia except me right now, my husband's doctors were all in Chicago, and he was like, "We got to go to Chicago. I'm in a high risk category." So anyway, so we are hanging out in Chicago, and I am working on issues in Virginia. So it's all good. One of my sons came back from working on a campaign in Texas, and so he's here with us. And another son is down the street, and he's afraid to give us anything, so he comes and waves at the window, and we're safe. We're good.
Okay, glad to hear it. Let's talk a little bit with each of you about how you're thinking about this crisis and where we are at the moment. You're both folks who have long-term visions and you have particular things you're interested in, but just kind of frame where we are today. In my mind, we're at the 22nd day of the lockdown in New York. Where you are, and you may have experienced it in a slightly different way, but where are we? What does this mean for us? And look ahead for us, please. Let's start with Robin. And folks, please keep posting your questions. We'll also ask each of them to just give us a little bit more of their background. I did say it at the beginning, but people are just joining us now. So Robin, we'll start with you, a little bit of background, and then we'll get your thoughts on the future and where things are. Go ahead, please.
So I'm Robin Chase. I co-founded Zipcar 20 years ago. And since then, I've done a number of other transportation startups. I wrote this book called Peers Inc., How People and Platforms Are Inventing the Collaborative Economy and Reinventing Capitalism. And I would say my primary focus in all the work I'm doing right now is really how to address climate change. And what I know best is in urban transportation. But if I think about this particular moment in time, I have to be honest, I never imagined, I've known that we've needed to have big changes, and I never imagined that I would find myself in this kind of sci-fi pandemic horror film that we are finding ourselves in. And it's coming with a lot of hardship and suffering. And I don't want to take that lightly in any way. And I grew up in the Middle East, actually, and so I spent all of my childhood out of this country. And so I'm very attuned to imagining what life is like in other economies and in other very densely packed cities. And I do think a lot about that suffering. But let me step away from that, which many people don't have the luxury of doing right now. And I think, wow, this is a moment where the whole world economy has come to a standstill, effectively. And if I think of all the changes that we have been trying to make in addressing climate change, making new sustainable economies and addressing equality, the biggest barrier to making those changes is what the status quo is, and what status quo capitalism is, and what status quo companies and their power looks like. And we are now in this moment of a complete, as I say, complete shutdown. And it's giving us an opportunity. It's dramatically changed the status quo and who holds power. And this government is spending trillions of dollars to hopefully spend most of that on bolstering people, but also spending it on infrastructure and on business. And I think this is an opportunity for us to think, we want to make a sustainable, equitable future. Where do we want to place? Where should we be placing that money? What are the industries? What are the sectors? What are the structural mechanisms? Do we give it to people? Do we give it to small business? Do we bolster big existing companies? So what does that look like? So I feel like this is a horrible moment of suffering, and I don't see that it's going to get over quickly. But can we work like the Dickens, pushing our governments to reshape in ways that are ones that are the economy, get us closer to a sustainable, equitable economy that we should be going towards? Let me stop there.
Yeah, but that's such a big thought to kind of pause on for a minute. Let me just remind people about your book. It's called Peers Inc., and you can find it on all the bookstores, but Peers Incorporated, if you want to look at the website and see more. I love some of the reviews you got. Peers Inc. is perfectly timed and convincingly argued, said the FT. And I love this quote: Peers Inc. is the wealth of nations for the 21st century, which is amazing. I wonder if you're thinking already that some of the principles in the book will now get accelerated because of this opportunity we have.
If we look at a lot of the programs that the government is putting in place, extended unemployment, extended benefits, I would say strengthening our social safety net. And there's the whole issue of people are focused on gig workers, but I want to talk about freelancers and people who just don't have full-time jobs, part-time workers. I think most of Americans, or most people who live in this country, actually don't have a full-time job with benefits from which they could have lost that job. And we need to reinvent this social safety net. And if I go to the book, what I see as an organizational structure that is incredibly successful is this idea of a platform companies. And Peers Inc. is saying that I don't like it when we talk about platform economy or the gig economy, that really it's a collaboration between these two sides. Platforms empower people. There's a lot of negatives that we see today when those platform companies, and those negatives stem in large part by our incredibly weak social safety net that applies, as I say, not just to people who work in the gig economy, but people who are freelancers or self-employed or contract. So this is an opportunity for us to rethink that. And I guess there's a lot of things to say, and I want to make sure that Kim.
Yeah. No, but just to say that there's so much attention now, at least in a good way, about the future of these gig workers right now as they're dealing with this crisis in a way very different from other folks. And also we're seeing that some of these big companies are going to hire lots of temporary workers, gig workers, while some others contract. And yeah.
So let me say a positive sentence about these platform companies is that if you are a gig worker, and if you work on one of these platforms, you have some economic autonomy. You don't have to wait for some boss to go hire you. You can say, I need some money, I need to do some work, and you can go get that income right now. For that reason, it's incredibly empowering, and people have a lot of flexibility, and that's why they do it. The incredibly negative side is there's no healthcare, no sick care, lots of workplace benefit rules don't attach to that. Those are the things that we need to change. What I like a lot about platform companies is they empower individuals, they enable them to have some economic autonomy, and they can scale very fast. And so we have all kinds of platform companies. Wikipedia is a platform company. I'd say SteamYard is a platform company that we're able right now to do this thing, even though none of us have any skill in technology of making video and digitally, right? So we are empowered by this platform. I think there's a whole bunch of ways these platforms could change, and some do better than others. What are their ethics? How do they treat the peers that work on them? If I think about Elinor Ostrom and the non-tragedy of the commons, these platforms are commons of sorts because people earn their livelihoods on these platforms. And Elinor Ostrom would say to us, the best of these platforms, the best of these commons are ones in which the peers who are working on them create the rules of engagement, that we are the ones who discuss and decide the rules of engagement on platforms that we're working on. And these platform companies are only 10 or 15 years old. They aren't doing a great job at that. They're doing differential jobs at that. But if I look to the future, they are a way for people to get themselves employed very quickly. But we need to provide much more support in addition to that.
Sure. Carla's watching from New Jersey. Marilyn says she loves this, but she can't stay. She's sharing and we'll watch later. That's great, folks. Just hit share. Let more people see this and watch it on all the different platforms. Roberta is watching from Richmond, Virginia, and that's a perfect segue because Kim is her boss. So let's have Kim tell us about the work she does with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and also what you're thinking, and maybe also reflect a little bit on what you heard from Robin about the state of these workers that we don't think enough about.
Yeah, so I'm Kim Bobo. I'm the director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We are the state's largest interfaith organization that works at the intersection of social justice and policy. So we try to have a faith voice in the Virginia General Assembly, and we advocate economic, racial, social, and environmental justice in Virginia's policies and practices. We've been on the front lines of issues of low-wage workers and immigrant workers and healthcare. So a lot of the issues that we're talking about here today. In particular, right now, we've been leading an effort to both raise the minimum wage in Virginia, but also to remove the exemption on farm workers. So we're at this very weird moment where the Department of Homeland Security says that farm workers are essential workers for the society. And we know they are. We've all got to continue eating during this pandemic. So farm workers are critical for all of us. But in Virginia, they are exempt from the minimum wage. And that's only $7.25 an hour in Virginia. So we've been leading a fight to try to get our governor to amend the minimum wage bill that has been sent to him to raise the minimum wage, but to amend it to remove the prohibition on, remove the exemption on farm workers for that. So that's kind of one of our current fights. But I also want to reflect, you'd asked this question earlier about like, what does this moment say to us about policies? And I was just sitting here jotting down notes about all the ways in which this epidemic lays bare some of the faults and fault lines in the society. So, you know, even though we've made great progress on healthcare with the Affordable Care Act and in Virginia expanding Medicaid, we still have a crisis in healthcare because not everyone has coverage and not everyone has coverage they can afford. And so we've had this crisis when we have a pandemic. Well, will people be able to get the tests, and will they get coverage, and will they be able to pay for it? And so again, as part of the crisis, we've had to address healthcare because we don't have a universal system here. Secondly, because we have no standards nationally on paid sick days and paid leave, when we've had a pandemic, we've had to create roughshod a system to create some paid sick days and paid leave for people because we don't have systems right now. We have no really good standards on protective care for workers, right? OSHA has been a joke for many years for workers, and now we have a pandemic and we don't have enough protective gear for our frontline workers. Or our farm workers stuff, right? Farm workers don't have protective gear. Or we haven't had unemployment systems that really cover these gig workers and independent contractors, right? Our system isn't set up. So when we're addressing the crisis, we've had to create some new rules to cover gig workers and independent contractors. Or voting. I mean, we are not doing well in terms of using vote by mail or online voting or other systems that are available for voting. And so now in this crisis, we're having to create them quickly. Or our prisons. Like, you know, our prisons are just inhumane situations and everybody knows it. And now we have COVID virus in the prisons. And so we're quickly scrambling to see how we can get people out of prisons faster. So it feels like the pandemic is forcing us to create on the fly systems that we should have already had in place for being a more humane society.
Thank you, Kim. I'll just show people your website once more, Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. And you can go in there and you can see many things, including you have a petition that you want people to sign.
Yes.
On workers to get a fair wage. And folks, if you're watching right now, please tag a friend. There are folks around the world watching. Colin's watching in Johannesburg. Hi, Colin. Thank you. I know you've been doodling on our different shows and sharing that. Please do. Please use the hashtag Sree COVID-19 call so that we can all see it. Jody's watching from Fort Lauderdale. Hi, Jody. And she has a question that we'll come to in a minute. We'll take all of your questions, but please do post them when you get a chance and just ask them in Facebook or in Twitter. I want to now bring back Robin Chase and show people this article that she wrote that's very timely because it's about what we can do or what governments can do right now to make a difference at this time of coronavirus with mobility. So this was published in the Boston Globe, and Robin writes, road clear to vehicle traffic should be open to foot traffic during the coronavirus pandemic, as COVID-19 forces us to practice social distancing of 6 feet or even more, and so little car traffic, we could temporarily take back roads dedicated to cars and rededicate it to people. So Robin, tell us more.
In cities everywhere, we have way too many cars in general, and it's cars that's make it impossible for people to walk or bike safely. And this is why we have a huge amount of congestion, because you have one person traveling in this big car. In cities around the world, we are really working hard to get people into other modes of transit. What's amazing about this particular moment is that we now have a huge amount of excess capacity on our roads outside, and people are in our densest cities, probably like Chicago and New York and Boston. When people do go out, and in these shutdowns, it does say that you're allowed to go out for fresh air, and I think it says fresh air and exercise. So we're all allowed to go out for fresh air and exercise, but we are on these crowded sidewalks and not getting the best places. So this is an opportunity for us to take away some of those lanes from cars and give them back to the public, which these are public rights of way. As I think about this, that article just got written two or three days ago. In my state of Massachusetts, just in those 2 days, the state extended the shelter at home for another month. And I think across the US, I think they also did that. And what is really striking is if I think of the 1 million school children there are in Massachusetts, or the 115,000 homeless school children in New York City, the idea that we're going to keep them in rooms for weeks and weeks on end is just terrible. And we had this opportunity to relook at our city streets, and particularly places that are next to beautiful things, like next to parks, next to rivers and ocean, and deep in neighborhoods where we've got really lanes that are just way too wide. How can we claw back some of that space and get people out walking? And what I have realized, as have others, that bicycles, if you can get yourself a bike, or I have a 2-year-old grandson on his little scooter, you are in an enforced 6 foot distance from everyone because of the vehicle itself. So I see this is a really great, it's many things that we can do at the same time. We can have people re-envision and re-experience their cities with fewer cars. We can give them back space that they definitely need while we're all cooped up inside in this. And I'm hoping that mental pilot, a psychological way that we can observe, do we prefer our cities' air pollution? Do we prefer cities where we children out or get killed as we cross the street or travel? So this is happening in cities around the world, are pulling back. In Bogota city, I do some work in, they shut cars 50 kilometers of streets and opened it to bicycles, that people can have better recreation, and also so essential workers can get to work on bikes and electric bikes. Paris has shut down a lot of streets during this time. Minneapolis just announced that it is shutting down some streets. London, New York is shutting down some. So I think it's an opportunity for people to look at what's going to take with this excess capacity. Where can we safely enable and use bike without? And so this is a nice opportunity, and hopefully people those streets.
Thank you. That you're listening to Robin Chase and Kim Bobo. Each of them have such interesting backgrounds and are working on such important things for all of us. Let me ask you, Robin, in terms of your work with Zipcar, I know it was 20 years ago that you founded it. How much of that was to see fewer cars on the road? And now that 20 years have passed, how do you grade how that's worked?
I look at Zipcar, and I created that company because it was a service that I personally wanted. I lived in a city. I lived in the same city. I had 3 children, a husband who had a car and who used it to get to work, and I got to work by subway. And I knew I wanted to have I want to have a car sometimes, but not all the time. So I really was seeing that technology was the way to give more autonomy without car ownership. So I can continue to be car free and have autonomy, be able to. And if I'm at the 20 intervening years, I think of what we did. I think we were the first company to use technology to make sharing simple. To be the first company to say, transportation is an amazing place to innovate, and it's not just about making some fancy car, it's about behavior and use and how you use those cars. So it really changed how people think about innovating in this space. And we were really one of the first people to do a platform and a sharing economy platform way back then. So I see all the companies that have followed in the transport space definitely had Zipcar to thank in terms of breaking the mold and showing this was a place to innovate and telling investors that this was a spot where there was a consumer demand, that not everyone wants to own a car and spend 17% of their income. I guess I want to be clear as I look at Kim and think of farm workers, that Zipcar and a lot of these technologies are made for people who don't need a car to get to work. And I completely recognize that if you need a car to get to work, you have to own a car. And then I will just give you I know so many statistics about transportation. So for the lowest 20 percentile income in our country, the poorest 20% in our country, they spend 30% of their income on transportation. And just think, it's their first 30%. Their first 30% of their dollars is spent on that car because they cannot get a job without the car. And so a big piece of the work that I'm doing is definitely in cities. And if I think about the rise of electric bikes, if we could have a piece of that made it safe to go by electric bike, people on electric bike up to 10 miles away in commutes, that would give access to jobs, a wide variety of density configurations. And 50 trips are less than 3 miles. And yet people are using their car 70% of them. So it's a grotesque overdependence on cars, which has all these climate implications, which I care a lot about, but it also has real health budgets. Coming back to this idea of autonomy, that children less than 16 are completely trapped. And if you don't own a car, you're trapped. And I was looking at numbers that 50% of the population at any given moment is completely imprisoned because they can't drive a car. And 50% of 330 million people in this country is a lot. And so when we have a car-dependent world, depriving of autonomy and to 50% at the moment. So it's a really interesting space to work in. Look at this horrific economic hard stop. I do see it as an opportunity to think about how would we recreate transportation, which is everyone's gateway to opportunity, where people kind of don't even think about transportation, but you can't do any single thing you want without transportation to get there. If we could reduce the price and cost of that and let people do that in a safe way without getting killed, and I'll tell you that 37,000 people a year die in the US and 1.3 million die each year in traffic crashes. And the numbers that are injured are just in the tens of millions. So anyway, we need to reinvent transportation. And I do think about it from both a sustainability and equity standpoint, as well as livable cities.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate that stat that the poorest 20% of Americans spend their first 30% of their income on their cars. And because they needed to get to work and get around, that's stunning statistic. Folks, you're listening to a conversation with Robin Chase. She's at RM Chase. Please do follow her. Kim, let's hear your maybe some thoughts on that. And then we've got some questions that have come in, so I want to bring those in as well. So Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, we've actually, I was talking literally this afternoon with Kendall Crawford, who directs our climate work. And she was talking to me about, I think the top priority we need to be moving into is this transportation issue, because it's the intersection of climate change and the concerns of low-income people, which is clearly a concern for the faith community, and transportation is where we need to be. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this stuff. So again, it does feel like it's a place for the future for us as a society.
Thank you. Let's get in some of the questions and comments here. One of them is from Jody in Fort Lauderdale. When this pandemic is past the crisis, can we sue the White House for not having in place what we needed to fight this crisis? So first, we'll go to Kim, and then we'll go to Robin.
I doubt we can. There are usually real protections for elected officials around being sued on political on decisions that they make. On the other hand, we do have an election coming up in November, and I think that's where all of us need to be involved.
So you're saying that that's a better way to spend your energy than worrying about.
We need to get people to register to vote. We need to get them out to vote. And, we need to be starting working on that right now. Absolutely. These, I think, what is also shown in this crisis is that we need competent leadership. So we not only need competent leadership at the president or governor level, but in state agencies, right? And it's been so clear in this crisis that at the national level, we just haven't had people who are competent leaders who can manage this kind of crisis. And, we need competent leaders on a daily basis, but we especially need them in a crisis.
Sorry, go ahead. There was just some glitch there. Go ahead. You were saying?
I just think we really, we need competent leaders that, if we're going to have a democracy, part of democracy is having good government, and that good government works for people. And frankly, we've had such an undermining of the democratic processes in this country, and the sense that government can actually work in people's best interests. And frankly, we've had people arguing that government doesn't work, and then we starve government, and then it doesn't work. And then people say, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because we've created it, so it doesn't work. And it becomes this ever-fulfilling prophecy that really undermines the core institutions of democracy in our nation. And we've got to change that. We need a government that can provide us protective gear, that doesn't have 50 governors arguing and fighting among one another to get the basic goods.
And bidding against each other, right?
It's craziness right now. Or we need people that are watching what's going on in China and say, this is coming, we need to plan for this, and don't wait till the last minute, right? That's what we need government to do for us. And when it doesn't serve us, then it really undermines our democracy. And so we've got to be involved in democracy right now. We've got to vote in the elections, and we've got to demand that our elected leaders actually begin planning and addressing all these issues that are being laid bare. The fact that we don't have health care, that we don't have paid sick days, that we don't have protective gear for all of our workers. These are core things that democracy and our government need to help us get.
Thank you. And Jody agrees, and Jody says we need everyone to get out and vote, especially the youth of our nation.
Yes.
I wanted to ask Robin, ever since I saw the story this morning, that in the middle of all this, the federal government and the Trump administration went back and eased the fuel restrictions, or the better fuel economy and efficiency guidelines that were in place already, the ones that the automobile industry agreed to, right? They've agreed to this, and now they're rolling it back and making it easier to pollute. Talk us through that if you can, and what does that say about where we are in the middle of this crisis? Things like that are happening.
That's been talked about for a while, and I think all the manufacturers are really ruining it and aren't going to follow that. They're going to keep going down the path they're going because they realize they're going to have zero. They're going to be totally uncompetitive with everyone else in the rest of the world. No one's going to buy our cars. If they followed that plan, no one would buy their cars. So in fact, I think they did want something from the Trump administration, but I don't think that's what they wanted. And now they think, oh my God, we don't actually want that, and we don't want to do that. So I was talking with someone behind the scenes, and he thinks that they're not going to change things because it's a crazy idea.
Oh, are there?
It just makes us more and more uncompetitive.
Yeah. So are there things that we could be thinking about if you had a chance to think about what, through the lens of this crisis, what will we have learned in the next few weeks and months that then can help in your particular case, Robin? You care about climate, you care a lot of things, but about climate change and helping prevent that. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
On Twitter, I learned a really interesting framing for this, and it was the 4 R's, or the 3 R's of disaster. And the first one was reduction. So yes, we're all trying to flatten the curve. The second was relief, which is get money immediately to the people who need it. I'd say right now we should be doing relief. Then after that, there was a recovery. And so let's talk about that. And then the 4th R is resilience. And so if I conceptualize this, the reduction, I'm not a public health official, they're telling us what we should do, that's great. Around relief, what's been quite striking to me is when I wrote Peers Inc., I realized as I looked at our current economic situation and what platforms do and automation, that we really didn't need to create a universal basic income. And so it's been really an amazing thing to see. Andrew Yang, who brought it up to the presidential, and everyone still thought, they scratched their heads and some people paid attention. But here we are exactly in the moment where we are effectively creating a universal basic income. Yeah. And no one is crying and complaining about it. And as I say, I don't think we're going to have, that this is going to be a 2 weeks more shelter in place. It is, until we get a vaccine, this is going to be stretching on for quite a while. So we need to have a minimum amount of money that everyone gets, period. And then what I also thought was interesting as they crafted it was to think that let's just make it universal. You mail it to everyone. And then when we do taxes, we can say, oh, if you made this amount, you're going to pay this amount back, or this more. So you can correct it on the back side so rich people don't get it. But you do that in a tax place. And if you don't pay taxes, you will be getting the full amount, which you should be getting. And then also, as Kim has been saying, this has been the moment, this whole crisis is showing all the flaws in our systems, which we had so many flaws, and these are showing all those cracks. So we need to improve our social safety net and universal basic income. So I feel like that is the second R of relief. Like right now, right this minute, what do we need to do? And then going into that recovery, I would love to see us do a lot more instead of giving large sums of money to existing industries like the airline industry, which does not belong in the sustainable future, let's not bail them out. And I have to say, around the auto industries, I want us to bail out individuals and humans and give them things. And I'd like to see, if we're going to support business, I'd love us to be supporting small business. So what are the, as I say, we'll provide health care into the future. We will cover the rents that something I would love to see is a rent hiatus, capital asset payment hiatus. The whole point of capital assets is you're supposed to get a return on investment, and it's rich people who own the capital. And there is no return on that investment. So all of the buildings that we're in and the big pieces of equipment that we've bought, they aren't getting any return. They're all sitting idly. And they also have long lives. So I think if a building has a 30-year life, and now we need to extend it to 30 years and 6 months. And for these 6 months, no one's going to be paying anything on that asset. And we'll just start up anew and say, okay, now start paying your rent, start paying your capital stuff. And to take that down to the line, down through banks. And that's where the federal government will be backstopping. But if you support individuals in their day-to-day livelihoods at this minimum level, we are supporting people. And rich people who have other assets, I don't want to be supporting capital at this moment. That I think we really need to be supporting individuals and small businesses, which I was just thinking of Main Street businesses. So I'm a daycare, I'm a nail salon, I'm a, corner deli. You have employees, your biggest expenses are your employees and your rent. It is in this moment where no one can visit your shop. The thing to do is to say, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to pay rent, and I'm going to fire my employees, because there's no other way that you can proceed. But if we can hold that, if we can say you don't have to pay rent for this period of time, and we're going to cover employees, then you can keep that thing running during this period where you can't make any money. But my daughter's daycare for her child closed, and I thought, if I were those people, that is what I would have to do. You don't have a choice. If you can't, you have to be able to get out of your rents. The way we've structured now, you don't have any choice. And so we see people being laid off. And I think there's plenty of small business owners and owners that don't want to lay off people, but they don't have any other choice. Because
thank you for sharing those thoughts, Robin. I spoke to a pizza maker on my show who took out a $50,000 loan instead of letting go his workers, right? Wasn't that a wonderful feel-good story? But it was also a story of this man who said, I want to help my workers first. And he thought, you always say we're a family, but these are so many people showing that it's actually true, and others not so much, right?
But this is the piece, when I look at the loans, I think the loan isn't helping. Small businesses can't pay back. When am I going to be able to pay back a $50,000 loan? Right? But regardless, I'm just saying that that I'm hearing out of government, let's create more loans, and small businesses cannot pay back those loans. They don't have. Yeah.
What's actually very interesting, the new law that's supposed to give loans to small businesses to keep their employees on. I know a lot about this because nonprofits are covered, and I'm worried about my nonprofit. And so I've checked it out. And the way it's written is actually very interesting, which is it's a loan, but if you keep your employees on, it will turn into a grant. Now, the problem is that we were told that the banks would be accepting applications as of this morning. And literally last night, the Secretary of Treasurer said, don't worry, the banks will be ready to take it this morning. So, of course, I had my application ready, and I literally submitted it to my guy last night, and he was like, we have no clue what to do. We're not taking applications as of this morning. Absolutely, we're not taking applications because we haven't gotten any instructions on how to do this. So once again, we have a core competence problem.
Yeah.
It's like,
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I got to say, I was planning, in my show, I try to show a cartoon when I can, and this was a cartoon I was going to show later, but this is the cartoon that sort of shows us what is really happening. This is about Jared Kushner yesterday saying things about how how the federal government thinks about our stockpiles versus the state stockpiles. But this is also, I heard Mnuchin say exactly what you did. He was told that banks are not ready as of Wednesday or Thursday, and he said, no, they'll be ready as of Friday morning. Don't worry. And of course they were. You have to worry. This is there's a cartoon from Matt Davies of Newsdays, a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist, and you have to laugh because otherwise you'll be crying when you see things like this. And that's the story of everything that's going on, and captured, unfortunately, so well by Matt. Let's just
and then this whole thing about we're going to send everybody $600, right? Or we're going to send everybody, money. Well, that's fine if you have a direct deposit, and yet, 30% of low income folks, they're unbanked. They don't have banks. So, and yet there clearly are ways we could do this, right? I mean, people have Venmo, they have other ways of getting money. So we could figure out how to get people money. But once again, the poorest of the poor in the society are really not going to be served as well as they should be. It's a problem.
I agree. Here's a question. Andrew Yang was on the Daily Show last night, says Marjorie, talking about the payments, but a news source recently said that this first round of direct deposits would be charged against taxes later. I hadn't heard or seen that point on any other broadcast. Is this true? And so this touches a little bit, Robin, on what you were saying.
I think it is. I think they said that up to $100,000, it wouldn't be. And if you earned more than $100,000 you will be taxed against it. But so there was a sliding scale around taxes on this money.
Okay.
But that's fair. That's right. Like if people end up at the end of the year doing well and they got this extra money and they don't really need it, that's fair. That's what taxes are for. And if you didn't earn enough and it helped you to survive, you don't end up paying more taxes on it. Totally right.
Okay. We have a few minutes left, and then we know we want to get you back to your families, some of them tighter than others, as we heard from Robin. For those of you joining late, Robin Chase is in Massachusetts.
I'll give some color. This is the dog that wants to go in the door and out of the door and in the door and out of the door.
Of course, that's like our dog. So I didn't realize there was a dog also. So a dog and 4 adults are together in a one-bedroom apartment while they're doing some renovation. So I hope that you will be able to get out and to the place that you're working and you'll be living in. And I just want to leave you with maybe one more question and then a final thought from each of you. So Robin, would you tell us what are the projects you're working on now, and how are they going to change looking ahead? And are there ways in which people who are watching can get involved either directly with you or to support you, or to raise attention to what you're working on?
I recently co-founded my first nonprofit called NUMO, NUMO .global, and it's the New Urban Mobility Alliance. And that work is to say that there's a huge amount of disruption happening in cities around the world because of new innovations. And cities are therefore forced to discuss the status quo on streets and how can we take that discussion and create these sustainable, equitable streets. So I've been doing a lot of work with NUMO. Thank you for pulling that up. And I would say follow me on @RMChase. I've been doing a lot of different things, and there's a staff that is helping. So small, if I think of things I'm excited about right this moment, we created a transportation card game called Mo Mobility, and it's kind of like apples to apples, and it really introduces people to transportation ideas, and crazily, people really like it. Like, it's a crazy thing that people are really enjoying. This is showing, I'm very, very interested in the potential for electric bikes to transform, as I say, commutes, people's household budgets. It takes up they are zero emission. They have a very, very small footprint in cities. They give people the autonomy that they've been loving to have. They cost way, way less. And the price point for those has been coming down. And at this moment, what I'm very excited about is that you can get a decent electric bike for about $1,200. And if you paid for that over a year, if you paid for it with down payment, payment plan over a year, each of those monthly payments is about $100, which is now matching what people are spending on their cars or on their transit passes. And so it's an opportunity for people to reevaluate how they would get around, to be able to move from big cars, big expensive and polluting cars, into a smaller thing and really get around. So I guess I would encourage people to go try an electric bike. They really are life transforming. And when people in your city want to give more space to people walking and pedestrians, you should say yes, and not fight it, because it's a key piece of the future livable cities that we need to live in.
Thank you. This is just drill down and remind people, New Urban Mobility, and it's numo.global is the URL. So please do check it out. And I love this map. I've never seen this before. So this is it is a quick way to understand how popular this has become around the world.
Yep.
Because you there are fights in individual cities about whether this is the right way to go or not, but clearly this is taking over in so many countries.
Oh, when you say that, I just have to say one time, when people are really afraid of bikes and e-scooters and electric bikes, and they're saying, oh my God, they're dangerous, or we shouldn't have them on their roads, I have to say, you know what's dangerous? Cars. 2-ton cars in cities where there's tons of people walking around. That's what's dangerous. And we really need to just change our mindset and recognize where the danger lies. And it lies with 2-ton pieces of metal going 60 miles an hour places. That's what's dangerous.
No, I hear you on that. In terms of your proposal that in these closed down cities, let's have more room by shutting down some streets or closing some streets so that
some
more
lanes. Yep.
Is that happening? What did the Boston mayor say to your proposal? What is
I can say so. That article is maybe 2 or 3 days old, and it's had an enormous run in my Twitter feed, and I've had a lot of people call in, and I think it has spurred conversation. And so I'm sure the city will be doing it. There's a lot of people who are pro this, and I'm trying to get it even beyond what's happening in Boston. I'm wanting even rural towns to think about it. Like, how can they make it possible for kids and people to get on their bikes and not think they're going to die?
And if this gets started, maybe people like it, and they will, they will insist on more of it. This is, New York, we have that Summer Streets program, as you know, where some streets are shut down in the summer. But what if we?
I'll leave people just to think about. Do you remember when you first learned how to ride a bike? Do you remember the joy you felt when you first learned how to ride a bike? Sure. And that autonomy? And then when you were 16, you can remember the joy that you thought, oh man, I'm 16. I can go wherever I want now with your driver's license. And then remember how you feel about it today. Those car payments, the cost of gas, the stuck in congestion, and e-bikes and bikes can take all that away. So I want to also be clear that I believe that we absolutely have to have a diversity of modes for sure, but we have an over-reliance on cars right now to the exclusion of every other thing. And so in our lives, we should use lots of different types of transportation and not just cars. And this is one of them.
And do you think that people will buy it? And
yes,
what needs to happen if someone is inspired by what you're just saying? What do they need to do?
I think they should see where they're living, and they should go talk to their city councilors or their mayor or their head of transportation to go look at this, to go think about it right now. It's a very obvious point right now. And I think we have a really good case with people being trapped in their houses and they need to get out sometimes. And so what can we do to give them more space?
Okay. Robin, we'll let you go. Folks, you're listening to a conversation with Robin Chase. She is at RM Chase on Twitter. She's a co-founder of Zipcar, and she's the author of Peers Inc. Please check out Peers Incorporated, and please check out numo.global. Many people will never have typed in .global before, so we're teaching them something new. So that's great. numo.global. Check it out. And Robin, at another point, I want to hear some of your great ideas around climate change beyond just the stuff you're already working on, because I know you have so many great things that you've been thinking about. Thank you so much for coming. We'll do the namaste.
Bye. Lovely to meet you.
Sorry.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good and stay safe. Bye-bye. All right, so we're now here with Kim Bobo, who's the executive director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. Before I let you go, I have a couple of questions, Kim, if that's okay.
Sure.
And one of the things is that, as soon as you hear Interfaith Center, people think it's about religious stuff alone, but here it's actually public policy. So the most important word there, phrase might be public policy as much as interfaith, right?
It's both, right? We call on people to do this because it's out of their faith. They want to do the right thing. But faith is not just about showing up at a worship service. It's not just about handing out food, but it's also influencing how we put love and justice in the public square. And so how do we make sure that these values of caring for one another get put into our policies and our practices of our government? And so that's what we do in Virginia. So we are trying to, we fought to get Medicaid expansion in Virginia. We've been fighting to stop wage theft, to increase the minimum wage, we lost a bill in this recent General Assembly to get paid sick days for the 1.2 million workers in Virginia who don't have paid sick days. Now, don't you think a lot of legislators are feeling a little dumb that they didn't support this in light of COVID? So we're going to get that next year. We're going to get paid sick days. But especially if you're in Virginia and listening to this, or if you have friends or family who live in Virginia, get them to sign up now for our action alerts. We'll tell people what to do. And if you're in a congregation in Virginia, this, as crazy as it seems, we want you to start sewing those little masks because we got workers who need them right now. So we're going to be doing some sort of direct action kind of stuff, helping our workers, but we also got to continue to fight on public policy in Virginia. So join us.
Thank you. And I've put up the website again so people can see it, the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. If I could ask you a couple of quick things. One is that in this country, we often, the perception is that people of faith, and particularly evangelicals and some other conservatives, are the conservatives who stand in the way of some of the social justice issues that you are so passionate about. Can you talk about that? Is it that those kinds of religious folks just have more political power, they're more savvy, they have Fox News on their side, or am I misreading that? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, for sure there are some right-wing forces that have, in many ways, I think, kind of exploited the faith community in ways that are not accurate. And there are some issues that are very divisive within the faith community, right? They're just people of faith aren't in the same place on them. But what actually does unite most people in the faith community is issues of concern about poverty and about low-income people and about immigrants. There is an enormous amount of unanimity in the faith community on that. And so that's what we try to build on in Virginia. Again, there's issues that are divisive. We don't work on those. We work on those issues that unite us. Making sure that people have health care, making sure that immigrants are welcome, making sure that people have living wages and jobs, and that there is a social safety net, right? Those are issues that unify the faith community. Those are the ones that we work on. But honestly, I have to tell you, the faith communities that do that don't always, we don't have the right-wing, crazy, huge funders supporting us to do the work, right? So we tend to be a little bit more scrappy, and we're out there fighting the good fight and doing the, prayer vigils in front of the predatory lending, and, we're doing all that to make it work. But there's a lot of us out there, and we really care about these issues. And so, whether it's the Virginia Interfaith Center or there's some comparable organizations in other states, join them, support them. We're doing good work.
I just wanted to say two things. One, I love the light behind you, the window. That looks amazing. The trees there.
Yeah, it's beautiful, huh?
They are. And I want to say that my friend Terry Ann Thompson says that's not true, Sree, where she says that I made the point that at least the perception is that there's a lot of power and noise that comes from conservatives of faith versus progressives of faith. So she assures me, as you can see in what she's written, that it's about social justice. And I obviously hope that and pray, if you will, that is true. But in every community, including the Hindu community that I belong to, right-wing, conservative people have a lot more oxygen behind them and with them, and are able to get a lot of the noise, make the noise that then drives others who are of faith but not so loud to kind of retreat. And this is a conversation, and a really good one, maybe for another day. Before you go, just a couple of things. One is we should tell people that even if you don't know, you may have friends who live in Virginia, because a lot of people in DC are actually
connect with us.
Virginia, right? So we gotta say that that particular part of DC, suburban DC, is actually in Virginia, a large part of it. So you may not realize this, but tag a friend who lives anywhere near DC, because they will have friends who live in Virginia. Yes. My parents lived in Bethesda for a while. They were Indian diplomats, so they lived in Bethesda, and they said, we're moving to Vienna, and thought they would be like, their friends would be so upset, and they were like, so what? They thought Vienna, Virginia, not
yes, right.
Vienna, Austria. That's why it took you a second as well, because you're thinking Vienna, Virginia, not Vienna, Austria, and that's
right.
That's one of the things. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that you've had a phenomenal day today. You started your day, or part of your day, with a show like this on your own. Talk about why you did that, why organizations like yours should be thinking about being your own media organization instead of just that, and maybe a little bit of your day. How many calls were you in? What were you? You've not even had a chance to think about it. Have you had lunch? Let me ask you that.
Oh, yes. So in fact, you inspired us. So I have this fabulous communications director, Roberta Oster, who is a friend of yours, and she'd watched your show, and she's like, we need to do this. Let's figure this out. And it seemed particularly important in this moment of where we're all on the computer, and that's our communication. Like, this is the way that we're going to have to do this, is figuring this out. So she worked all this week on figuring it out. We set up our first show. We did our show today about this issue of trying to remove the exemption for farm workers on our minimum wage. So we did a show. And actually, what's really fun is we're actually going to do the show in Spanish on Tuesday. Wow. Because some of our Spanish-speaking colleagues were like, we're getting all sorts of people saying, why don't you do this in Spanish? So, okay, fine. So we're going to do it on Tuesday in Spanish. So we've done that. I did a call with our leadership on Zoom. I've done calls with just tons and tons of people about writing op-eds on these issues and getting involved. And then we decided, we really needed to get a message out to all the churches and synagogues and mosques that are going to be meeting this weekend about, get the ladies sewing. A lot of congregations, especially who have older folks, they have knitting clubs and sewing clubs. And, my friends at the AFL-CIO told me that workers are desperate right now, desperate to have masks, even if they're not the N95 kind of mask. They just need something, right? And so we're going to get the sort of masses of folks out there who want to do something sewing little things, and we're going to try and figure out in the next couple of weeks how can we get them around to people who need them. I talked to the farm worker advocates. There's about 6,000 farm workers in Virginia, and they all need masks, right? They all need them right now. So, let's sew them. Let's get them to let's do what we can.
I love it. Churches are famous for making quilts and other things.
That's right.
And being
So
part
we're
of
going to
the
make masks.
community, and they can make masks. And I want to thank Kim Bobo for an amazingly long day. I watched her in action at 10 a.m. and she's got the same energy at almost 10 p.m. It feels like. Thank you so much. I hope you will have some downtime this weekend. It's important for you to keep up your energy and get some exercise and not sit in front of these calls all day. So I hope you'll be able to do something this weekend. Everyone, please check out the website. It's really easy to find. It's virginiainterfaithcenter.org. And I hope you have enough people from all the different communities. Yay! And I will be telling my folks who are in my community to make sure that they are registered and working with you. So follow Kim on Twitter and the organization on Twitter, VA Interfaith Kim and VA Interfaith itself. So those are the two Twitter handles. We're going to let you go. What's for dinner?
We're having Thai curry.
Oh, nice. Very cool. I'd love to come over, but not this time. We'll
maybe if you
I just invited myself. Did you like that?
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you very much, Kim. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. And say hi to the gang for me. Bye. And that was our friend Kim Bobo, who is visiting with us today. What a great conversation. I know it's Friday night. People are tired. People are tired of all the conference calls. So I think next week I might do this earlier in the day while we could still get people before they say, okay, we are done with these. But thank you so much for joining me. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot from these sessions. And I'm so glad that you all who are able to be here with us are here, and it gives me great energy, and I feel so good from being here. Saru says, hello from Teaneck. Thanks for this program. It's a daily fixture, and I love hearing that. My light just went out. I think that it's saying I've had enough as well. But before I go, I want to thank our phenomenal sponsor. Look at that. As soon as it's a sponsor, the light came back on. As they say, the sponsors keep the lights on, and that's what you're seeing here. And I want to thank our first ever sponsor, Sohn Social Media Solutions.com. Tim Sohn, S-O-H-N, is an expert on video, live video, and he's doing the Survive with Live Video 2-month course, which can help you learn how to do this in 2 months. And the price is $0 to $100. $0 to $100. What an amazing opportunity for all of us to learn. So please go to SohnSocialMediaSolutions.com and please sign up. The deadline is Sunday because Monday the course starts. So you will want to sign up. You know a friend who would benefit from this. So tell them SohnSocialMediaSolutions.com. Say Sree sent you. Take a photo of this right now and post it, share it, so that more people can sign up and benefit from this incredible class. $0 to $100. And if you like what you're seeing here and want to work with us, you want to be a sponsor, we have very good sponsorship rates. As you can see on the screen here, very reasonable. People are talking to us about having these ads. Why? Because we want you to share your message as I talk to the world. Share your message with the world. We're just shooting the breeze because we can't shoot the virus. So please tell your friend, just have them email me, sree@sree.net, SREE at SREE.net. If you have any suggestions for speakers, you have any suggestions for guests, you have any suggestions for topics, I'm happy to do them. I'd love to have you on a show if you're watching, because we want as many people to participate as possible. I didn't want to end without showing my friend who had a point about the cars versus bicycles. Jonathan said that as a chronic pedestrian, I can attest that I've been hit or nearly hit by more bicycles than motor cars. Unless bicyclists are licensed, I'm against it. So that's the kind of energy we want here. We want people to have a global conversation, and not everyone has to agree. Christine says, thanks for doing these daily shows, so helpful on so many levels. Christine, thank you very much. You are someone who has supported my projects by buying a ticket to Social Media Weekend, and I appreciate that. We still have tickets for those of you who want to see the recordings and things like that. Anybody who would like to get in touch, please email me. My email address is on your screen. Anything I can do for you, I'm here. Please share this video. I know it's almost over, but it'll be archived on all these platforms, and then you can watch it on your own, and they can watch it on your own. Tag a friend who would benefit from this conversation. If you are catching me right at the end, we had Kim Bobo from the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy at Kim Bobo. We also had Robin Chase, the co-founder of Zipcar, a startup that I love, no longer a startup, 20 years old. It's mind-blowing to think it's 20 years old. She also wrote Peers Inc., a book about rethinking capitalism and thinking about where things go from here. She's also a big advocate of mobility issues. So please check out her new organization, NUMO.global, NUMO.global. As soon as I finish speaking, this will get archived and you can watch it again, share it with friends, anyone who would benefit from these issues. So thank you very much for being here. I'm so grateful for your time and your attention. Let me tell you about 3 shows coming up. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about events on Saturday night, which will be a lot of fun. And then Sunday night is our weekly positivity night, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Sunday night, where we'll talk about positivity, how to be energized, with lots of great speakers around that. And then Monday, we're going to talk about brands and how they can be trusted. At this time, we have a wonderful guest from Edelman Worldwide to talk about their most recent study around this. And something I've not talked about a lot, but thanks to this show, I have a spin-off show on WBAI 99.5 FM in New York, WBAI.org, Saturdays 2 to noon, noon to 2 p.m. I host a show where we call it the Helpful, Hopeful COVID-19 show to help people in this very tough time. I have doctors, I have policymakers, I have all kinds of great people who share their ideas, and we can be helpful. It's a call-in show. So WBAI.org, it's a great progressive radio station in New York. Check it out. You can find me on there if you search. Otherwise, it's live noon to 2 p.m. Saturdays. I'm looking for guests for that as well. Thank you very much, everybody. I am so grateful for your time and attention. Please email me, Sree@sree.net, SREE@sree.net. Bye-bye.